Let's take a look at the HTTP start line in more detail. The start line is the first line in the HTTP request and the first line in the HTTP response. So let's separate the start line by request and response because they are not the same. What is the name of start line in HTTP request? Well, start line, but it can also be called request line. In response, start line, but it can be also called response line or status line. Does the request start line contain the HTTP version? Yes, it says HTTP/1.1. The same situation with response. It includes the HTTP version. Does the request start line include a method? Yes, it does. There are four main methods used: get, post, put, and delete. Let's take a look at methods in more detail now. Let's take a look at the HTTP methods. So let's type in a Google homepage, HTTP methods, see what we get. All right, let's go down to Wikipedia, definition of HTTP, and find methods. Request methods. So in this list are various methods. The main ones used are get, which means get information, post, which means create information, put, which means change information, and delete, which means delete information. For those of you in the database world, this means CRUD, CRUD, create, read, update, delete. In this case, get is read, post is create, put is update, and D is delete. Now there are other things here, but they are less used. And when there's API documentation, generally they will tell you which one of these methods you can use. Back to our table. Is a method required in the HTTP response? No. What about the API program folder location that specifies where the API is? Is that needed in the request? Yes, it is. For example, if we're doing our Google search, we need to put in the folder /search so it knows to use the search program. Is it included in the response? No. What about parameters? Is that sent to the program? Yes, it is. For example, the parameter for a Google search is Q equals tuna if we're searching on tuna. What about with the response? No. Status code. Did the API work? Is that included in the HTTP request? No, because we don't know yet if it worked. What about with the response? Yes. The response sends back a status code. If it's in the 200s, it meant it went okay, success. So let's go into more detail about status codes now. Let's go to our familiar Google homepage and do a search on HTTP status codes. See what we get. Let's go to Wikipedia. So here's a list of HTTP status codes in detail, like only Wikipedia can do detail. If the status code comes back in the 100s, it means information. It's still running. Wait. In the 200s, it means success. Very often you will see 200, okay. 300 means it's being redirected to somewhere else to be completed. 400 means that there was an error from where it was sent. For example, your computer or your cell phone. 500 status codes means there was an error to where it was sent. For example, the Google program. and then there are other unofficial codes. So these are the standard status codes in an HTTP response. Let's finish our table. So what's the format, the final format to create our start line? In request, we put in the method, that's this, then a space, then the API program folder, if it exists, that's this, then parameters, that's this, then space, then the HTTP version, that's this. What about for response? We put in the HTTP version, that's this, space, status code, that's this. Let's go over some examples. If we're doing a Google search on tuna, this is what the start line looks like. We have our method, we have a space, we have the API program folder, we have parameter, in this case q equals tuna, and then we have the HTTP version. What about the response? An example is this. Here's the HTTP version, and this is the status code. Before finishing with start line, there's an important concept I'd like to bring up, and that's the concept of idempotence. What is idempotence? It means you can repeat something as many times as you want, and the results will stay the same. That is, you can repeat it over and over and over again and be safe. What does this have to do with APIs? It has to do with the method in the start line. So let's look at the method and ask whether or not it's safe to repeat over and over again. The get method, is that safe to repeat over and over again? Example of the get method is the Google search on the term tuna. Yes, we can. You can do it as many times as you want, no effect. What about the post method, where we are creating a record? Can we do that over and over and over again? No, it is not idempotent. If you create a record using post, and then you use post again, it will create the same record again. Now this seems obvious to you, but from real world experience, you have to be careful. If you're doing a post, somebody else could be doing a post, you might have a loop in there. What about put? Remember what put is? That's just changing something. Is that idempotent? Yes, the same change is applied to the record over and over and over again. And the first time it gets changed to what you want it to be changed to. The second time it's already changed, so there's no effect. What about delete? Is that idempotent? Yes, you can delete as many times as you want. The first time the record is deleted, then you ask to delete the same record. It's not there, nothing happens. Exercise time. Now it's time for you to think about the answers to questions regarding the HTTP start line. First question, what is in the request HTTP start line? Put it on pause and think about it. The method, the API program folder, if it exists, the parameters, if you have them, and the HTTP version. Next question, what is in the response HTTP start line? The HTTP version, as well as a status code. Last question, which HTTP start line method is not idempotent? Post. Let's go into details about HTTP headers. Again, the 4 parts of HTTP are start line, headers, blank line, and